Disclaimer before the video starts. Please forgive me for butchering everyone's name. And please take everything I, a white guy in America, have to say with a boulder of salt. Thanks. The Remembrance of Earth's Past trilogy by Liu Cixin, that being The Three-Body Problem, The Dark Forest, and Death's End, might be the biggest hard sci-fi of the 21st century by a long shot. A massive saga covering dozens of characters and centuries of future history, and for a long time they called it unfilmable. Is it though?
I don't know. Yes?
Not technically, because they filmed it a godzillion times, but have all those attempts only proven the point? I'm definitely not the first person to make a video comparing different adaptations, but since I've been avoiding content about them, everything I'll say is coming straight from the heart. We're gonna be sincere again on this channel, until it stops being funny. Now, there is a frankly absurd number of adaptations of Liu's books, but for the purposes of this video, we're only going to be talking about the two big ones, released close enough to each other to be good companion pieces. Tencent's Three-Body in China, and Netflix's Three-Body Problem, a show you may know for being spearheaded by the Game of Thrones showrunners David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, take that as you may. This video is really meant for people familiar with at least one of the three versions: book, Netflix, Tencent. But for everyone else's sake, I'll have markers throughout that tell you I'm moving into a higher spoiler level, starting from broad strokes and then narrowing into specific plot details. If you want my spoiler-free judgment as to which show is better, go to this timestamp. In the meantime, you can watch the shows here. As for what they actually are, Book 1, and therefore the first season of both shows, centers on three seemingly disconnected plot threads: a conspiracy against scientists in the modern day, the life story of one woman during and after the Cultural Revolution, and a VR game called Three-Body. Yeah, that's the title of the show. For people who haven't read the book, the less you know going in, the better. Just be reassured, especially if you're watching Tencent, that it will all come together in the end. Trust me. The Remembrance trilogy is a trilogy, but each book follows a different main character. Wang Miao in Book 1, Luo Xi in Book 2, Sheng Xin in Book 3. The way things are going, if we pretend to ignore the spin-off show, it seems like Tencent is opting to do 3 seasons for 3 stories. So the separate plot lines don't have to overlap, even though they all start out around the same time in universe. Netflix, on the other hand, is adapting the entire trilogy simultaneously, so everything plays out in chronological order. And this one difference dictates everything each series is and isn't allowed to do. It sets the boundaries for how they tell the story. It's everything. There are pros and cons to both approaches. Tencent is following the book structure, which, assuming we can extrapolate from just season 1, which we really honestly can't, makes for a cohesive plot within each season, but throws watchers back to square one afterward. It also makes for weird non-reveals like this. Like, people who haven't read book 2 aren't gonna know who this guy is. He's the protagonist of the second season, but flashing him here will make most people feel like your grandma watching a Marvel post-credit scene. Netflix is merging all 3 stories into one, which means continuity between seasons, yay! But it also means contriving some reason why we're following all these disconnected characters. So, the fix? Make them connected already. It gives us a stable ensemble, but it makes the world feel tiny. Plus, in order to give characters something to do when they would otherwise be absent, the show distributes subplots across the ensemble that would otherwise have gone toward fleshing out just 2 or 3 characters. So instead of a few people getting a lot to do, it's a lot of people getting just some to do. And they don't have much time to do it either. Secondary characters don't fare much better. They get cut and condensed in order to compensate for all the shenanigans the main cast is up to. At least this way, the show can crystallize certain themes into single characters, which lets it avoid the subtle but sometimes tedious subplots Tencent engages with.
前面2个小时55分，我坐在他面前一句话也没说，他绷不住了。
Does Netflix do it better then? No. But they tried. And let's not pretend Liu's books are easy to adapt, either. They're deceptively huge in scope. The characters are dry as hell, action is sparse, and more so as the trilogy goes on, you'll get long sections of highly conceptual exposition that are almost impossible to ground with a character, which is what Netflix tries to do by introducing Sofan, this lady, 2 books early. The more I think about it, the less that decision frustrates me, but it speaks to a trend I'll discuss later, which does. Anyway, with this book as its foundation, the fact that Tencent's show works as a piece of television is a fucking miracle. But it is an undeniably book-like piece of television, and it inherits the traits that make the book hard to approach. It is not for everyone, mostly because of one thing: pacing. This is the other big split between Tencent and Netflix. Keep in mind, Three-Body has only 1 season so far. Its runtime? 22 hours, 29 minutes. 30 episodes. This show demands you be patient, and if you can't give it that level of commitment, you will be miserable. But with this much time, Tencent can not only really sink its teeth into the source material, but expand on it. New characters, new mini subplots, and some more thorough exploration of the themes in a way that doesn't detract from the main story. Mostly. Mystery becomes the main focus, rather than a speed bump on the way to action, which is made all the more rewarding by the time we spent with the characters. I can't deny the series has a way of dragging its heels, especially in the early to mid-season-ish, but that time forces us to stew on the mystery, nor can I deny that I'm biased as a book reader first. But this is a format that I feel better captures the three-body problem. Wanna know the runtime of Netflix's first season? 7 hours, 24 minutes. 8 episodes to adapt not just the first book, but the first 100 pages of the second and third. See where this is going? Trying for a faster pace isn't a bad thing. Not everyone has the free time for Tencent, and the masses want to get to the freaky parts, damn it. But the decision to squeeze this much material into just 8 episodes is just puzzling to me. Or at least it felt that way coming off Tencent's coattails. Does Netflix pull it off?
No.
But they did exceed my admittedly low expectations, so that's one thing. Listen, I haven't watched any other reviews of these series. All the outside opinion I know is from doom scrolling on Letterboxd, so when I tell you I could not have predicted the pacing of the Netflix show, you gotta believe me.
Only advance.
They speedrun through the first book at such an absurd rate that it boggles the mind. It takes them just 5 episodes to reach the end of book 1. After that, Netflix has to subsist on bits and pieces from book 3 until it can gear up the season finale to introduce book 2. For the very first time, it has to pad, which means crucial time for character development. Or the overarching plot, which before was cutting corners across the series at 4 light years a second, grinds to a halt. And what we're left with is a mediocre to fine relationship drama. Character writing was never Leo's strong suit, but I can't say Netflix does it that much better. At least the actors are giving it their all. There's some great performances here and there. Nothing Emmy-worthy, but very good. Is it too little too late? Maybe? Remember, Netflix is adapting the whole trilogy, so I can trust that they're playing the long game with all the foreshadowing between Jin and Will, for example. If there is one thing both shows are very good at, it is foreshadowing. I just hope it turns out they know what they're doing, because we know what happens when these showrunners overshoot their source material. That's the risk Netflix runs by taking so many liberties. They can't rely on Leo to stick the landing for them like Tencent, even if it means they get to explore avenues Leo couldn't, like swearing.
Why don't you cut the shit and tell us?
Holy shit!
Fuck!
Everything turns to shit. Physics is turning to shit.
Shit, time to be a scientist.
It was a real shit show, but those poor fucks kept digging until
They fucked everybody.
Fucking hell.
It's bullshit.
Bullshit.
All that shit.
All that shit.
Holy shit. It's fucked up.
It's fucked up.
You shut the fuck up, troll.
You're a fucking asshole. Fuck him!
Don't fuck it up.
Do not fuck it up.
Time is a motherfucker. Fucking.
Boring as fuck.
You guys are like 14-year-olds.
The Netflix show has a way of expanding the scope of things at the same time as it makes them shallower. It's like spreading butter over bread. Both of my main exhibits for this have to do with the sky. If you've seen the show, you know what I mean. It's great as spectacle, but doesn't communicate anything specific, which the book did and a show of Netflix's length really can't. I can't know for sure as a book reader, but non-readers watching will probably leave each episode with at least 1 or 2 questions whose answers the show just skips. And from my experience, that frustrates people. But what about me? Well, sometimes Netflix's attempts to heighten stakes just backfire. At its best, this darker tone captures the horror and moral ambiguity of Leo's story with the weight it deserves, and sometimes even improves on it. At its worst, its hastiness to dive deeper without taking the time to prepare can accidentally come off as almost silly, especially with how wildly its tone changes in the course of a single episode, or even a single cut.
I kissed a girl and I liked it.
Sure, it's dark humor, but how seriously do they want us to take it? Case in point, each show's tone is encapsulated pretty well by its take on Dashi, or Big Shi. He's the deuteragonist of the first 2 books, and brings in a level of humor and personality that other characters lack. Probably the one standout character of the whole series, which explains why Tencent is brewing up a spin-off show for him. At first I didn't see why, but oh man. Yu Hui. He is the perfect Shicheng. His charm, his sheer aura, His chemistry with Wang Miao, I really grew to love him. And so does Wang Miao, apparently.
放心，我会一直陪着你，王淼。就是你归零了，我也跟着你一起归零。明白了吗？一样了吗？
把它摘了吧，不用带进去啊。
不能摘，说好同生共死的。
AO3 lists upwards of 672 fics for them. Needless to say, I support 3-body yaoi. Point is, Tencent is earnest. The presentation is always sincere. They never wink at the viewers as if to pretend they're above it all. So a word of advice if you check it out. Embrace the melodrama. I really soaked in its tone as opposed to sitting at a distance while Netflix rapid-fired bitter, dissonant scenes at me. Their characters have emotions, but Tencent's show itself seems to have emotions. It believes in itself. Some people will find its sincerity a bit goofy sometimes, and I did too at first. But it grew on me. It gave a humanity to Liu's brutal and nihilistic world. Though sometimes it gives a little too much, runs right up to the edge of self-parody, drifts too much from the moral complexity that Netflix actually does provide. As for Dashi, Netflix gives us Benedict Wong. Okay, great actor. But all the high emotions that Yu Hui radiated off the screen are gone. I see the direction they are going for, and Clarence Shi is likable in his own way, but he does not hold a candle to Yu. He is a black domain for human feelings. Gets a few chuckles, but only for being so deadpan. Though with so many other characters shouldering the plot, I suppose they don't need him to be human anymore. They just need their detective to do his detective things. See, at the end of the day, Netflix's biggest crime, more than its liberties with the source material, or its breakneck pace, or its tonal flip-flopping, it's just sauceless. The world building, sauceless. The dialogue.
We'll probably watch Rick and Morty later.
Cool.
So,
Sauceless. The 3-body scenes. Sauceless. The ETO. Sauceless. Dashi. Sauceless. Joe Biden.
We must begin preparations for future generations today.
Sauceless. Call me out all you want for criticizing it purely on vibes, but you tell me. Everything in the 3-body game, for example, just feels so flat, artificial, which I guess is the point. But in trying to be more realistic, it ends up falling short of the level of reality all the characters are marveling over. It's all in the design of the headset, really. Tencent, you got all these wires and setup necessary. Netflix, it's this one sleek prop. I appreciate the simplicity. It hammers home how advanced the tech is, but the actual game is held back by its attempts to look real. Tencent's 3-body is different. It's not afraid of the spectacle, and it revels in the uncanny valley. In other words, it looks like a game, but just the otherworldly, off-putting kind of game the ETO would play, despite all the graphical limits which become increasingly obvious toward the end. There's a lived-in-ness to it. Obviously, Netflix's visuals are better on a technical level, but they might as well be playing on a Minecraft super flat world. The score embodies that flatness really well. Ramin Djawadi is back on the team like he was in Game of Thrones, and the soundtrack thinks it can be Game of Thrones, but it just isn't. It doesn't take many big sweeps, it doesn't go for anything really unique. It'll probably grow on me, but for now it just feels like a bunch of notes. At least I can give it credit for originality. Tencent's score is pretty unremarkable, except this.
Steps, sure, I got them. And I'm not only going to do the steps, I'm going to add a little extra,
But at any moment, some Hans Zimmer music will be awkwardly layered on top of the show, sometimes with a couple notes changed so it's technically different.
已经不适合这场局，也不再适合继续玩三体游戏。你们的游戏 ID 将被注销，下面请你们离开。感谢你们的到来。
I'd find it offensive if it weren't so amateurish, like they forgot to scrub the temp tracks or something. What can I say? They wear their influences on their sleeve. While we're talking about music though, Tencent's intro and outro music by Zhou Xian has both Chinese and English versions, and they're all way more catchy than they deserve to be. They're the perfect kind of moody for this show. Though, as someone who knows English, I do wish the outro song wasn't as on the nose about the stakes. It's kind of like Ye's message playing in the first episode, which I feel really undercuts the mystery at the heart of the show. Dramatic irony, sure, but that readiness to spoil the biggest turning point of the story so soon works better in the Netflix version because it's already going so goddamn fast. The way these songs just insert themselves into certain episodes does feel like padding, but it gives us time to mull over everything we've learned. The question is whether or not we need that in a 30-episode show. I mean, there's still more happening than needle drops in the Netflix show.
I kissed.
That's Netflix's city body problem in a nutshell. Taking big swings and bigger stumbles. High highs, lower lows. Outrunning its own ability to tell the stories that it's trying to tell.
What do you do then? Wait, hold on, don't tell me. Let me guess, you probably are...
I design self-assembling synthetic polymer nanofibers.
Oh, and the clumsy dialogue.
You run his oil company now. And Mao is dead, and I'm a professor at Tsinghua University.
Perhaps you've been watching too many Vin Diesel films.
Spare a pound or two for humanity.
Sorry.
It probably is on Tencent too, but I can't really tell because I don't know Chinese. In that way, I also can't tell if Netflix's actors are butchering Chinese as much as Tencent's do English. Although I do trust Netflix in this regard. Besides, the weird half-broken accent-blind English on Tencent is funny, if not intentionally.
Son, do you know how did the dinosaurs extinct during the Cretaceous?
The European general has an American accent.
We've always been united.
The American general has an Australian accent.
Are they projected or are there other carriers?
And the Australian general has a European accent.
Which sector are the servers located in?
You can tell it's an authentically Chinese show for a Chinese audience. I mean, look at all the English letter gibberish on the computer screens. What's not to like? Well, for a lot of people, quite a bit. Leo's books dip into Europe and America sometimes, but they're overwhelmingly China-focused, which isn't bad in and of itself, but given the planetary nature of the story, you have to start wondering at some point what's going on in, say, Africa or South America. You have to make the world bigger. Enter Netflix. Setting aside the fact that it gives itself so little time to world build, and its already interconnected cast makes the world feel smaller than a shared dorm, the world is indeed larger, but on a mostly superficial level. The showrunners talk big game about globalizing the story, which is a noble effort, but instead of getting India, Latin America, Africa, Europe, we get one British Indian character in the Royal Navy whose family we meet once.
I killed them all.
One Latina character who briefly visits a slum, one black character, and a few Chinese characters. It's a global cast in the most tokenistic sense. It's the narrowness of everything, the haphazard material they give the cast, not the cast, that bugs me. But then again, honestly, is it really that bad? What do I know? I'll complain about something else then. The characters. Where are they for most of the show? Well, here's the kicker. They didn't just not globalize the show. Hell, they didn't even westernize it. They fucking Britishized it.
Stopped at Marks and Sparks on the way.
Making a few characters white was inevitable, that's just how the game is played. But notice how everyone stays in Britain for almost the whole time. How Evans is painted with somewhat more sympathy than Ye, the opposite of how Tencent did it. How we get Chinese characters, but ironically we never see China except in the Ye scenes. And when we do, it's, well... Which would be fine if we got to see present-day China too, another side of the coin, but we don't. The China scenes themselves are not the problem, it's their decontextualization from the present that bothers me. This attempt at de-cinifying an inextricably Chinese story. That said, these scenes are probably the best part of the Netflix show. An honest enough depiction of the chaos of the Cultural Revolution. Ironically, it might be the most book-faithful plot thread of the season. And at the core of that is how Netflix represents Ye Wenjie, specifically young Ye. Xin Sang brings a seething, barely suppressed resentment to this character that actually tracks with what she's been through. One look at her and you can tell she has a reason to betray the human race. That much subtlety seems to be despite the show though, as her more bitter, older counterpart is a bit flatter. What can I say, she fits the tone. Now, Tencent. I do love their older Ye, Shen Xin, who gives a calm but resigned performance as a woman who's given up outrunning her sins. But their younger Ye, played by Wang Siwen, isn't as convincing. I'll give them this much, it's a hard role and it's not her fault. But she's not spiteful here, just maladapted. Perpetually in full makeup, surfing face, and stoic. Even at her lowest points, she's conforming to the beauty standard. That would be less distracting if she gave off the darkness her Netflix counterpart does, but even if she did, she didn't watch her father get murdered. Her sister didn't get impaled and die in a hail of bullets. She never confronted her father's killers and got her suspicions about humanity confirmed. There was no violence, just procedure.
叶文洁的妹妹叶文雪亲自带着运动领头的人，把自己的父亲带走，去对他论文中体现的思想内核进行问询。问询的关键阶段，叶哲泰的老婆少林也出现了，和叶文雪一起跟叶哲泰划清界限，这对叶哲泰造成莫大的精神打击。
小林比我强，他论证了所有的科学成果。 都是广大劳动人民智慧的结晶。
Just those relatively small changes defang the Cultural Revolution into something cryptic, and it feels dishonest even though the rest of her story is almost identical. Call that revisionism by omission, I guess. A lot of Tencent's show gives the impression of an overzealous faith in the systems in place to do the right thing, especially the military. So, I guess we gotta talk about the Judgment Day. The Judgment Day is the ETO's base of operations, the city on the water that keeps the data from Trisolaris, or the Santi, or the aliens. It's the correspondence with the aliens. To prevent anyone from destroying the data, our protagonists will have to discreetly kill everyone on the ship, including innocent people, including children. And they do. That's how Netflix portrays it, and it's easily the best present-day sequence in the whole season. They don't just keep Leo's moral ambiguity, they enhance it. They actually question the utilitarian excuse that everyone just kinda rolls with in the book. Now, let me show you a few actual clips from Tencent.
We've done our investigation of the crew. They are the worst criminals in the world. Terrorists, serial killers, pirates, murderers.
Why did you kill him? Because I love the feeling of my knife sliding into someone's throat and cut them a bit.
You cannot make this shit up. Tencent's goofiness can come off as charming when it's Dashi babysitting Wang's daughter or Shari-Shan getting delusions of grandeur. But the way they portray the military is dubious at best. It's straight out of Team America, but without any of the irony. And you can make excuses for this for things like the ETO raid. But what Tencent did with the Judgment Day is truly baffling.
I don't know how or why the ETI put together this criminal crew, but without a doubt, it's the Devil's Cage.
Turning it into a den of cartoon villains, aside from causing some big logical errors, only has one purpose, and it's to make the good guys good, doing the good thing no matter what. Leo's moral grey has all but disappeared. They even invent a personal antagonist for the Australian-American general for no reason. Yes, Wang Miao is traumatized, but they got the baddies. So, thematically, in context, Tencent's Judgment Day sequence is pretty much inexcusable. But goddamn if it isn't cool. The show takes full advantage of the ship's evil crew to put a triumphant action beat on top of the horror one. And it works. I don't care if Evan's death is kind of silly, because it goes way harder than it has any right to. So Tencent's change here gives me complicated thoughts. Terrible idea, amazing execution, but only in the moment, after you get past all this. Tencent is faithful to the novel, but only up to a point where they might sacrifice the moral high ground. They cannot keep that attitude going forward, or the next 2 seasons will really suffer for it. So, is Tencent sanitizing Leo? Here's a better question. Should they? Well, no, but hear me out. Much as I love the Remembrance trilogy, it does leave a lot to be desired. For one thing, it is highly conceptual, but sometimes those concepts rub me the wrong way. I don't think Liu actually believes that the true nature of the universe is ripped out of Hobbes' Leviathan, at least I hope he doesn't, but the motif of distrust is too strong in his stories to be discounted. They're ideological, like all art is. And the only thing scarier than the implication of the Dark Forest in cosmic sociology is its implication in human sociology, which Liu doesn't portray generously. Most characters are the big higher-ups in society, and the public is just an unruly mob whose commitment to democracy and puritanical approach to human life only gets in the way. That said, the Dark Forest concept is the Remembrance trilogy, which is good, because the Dark Forest concept is, how do I put this, neat as hell. Putting an optimistic spin on that isn't just lame, it's impossible. But there are other, more concrete things that actually are worth adapting differently. Mostly how Liu writes women, which is lackluster at best. Netflix mends that by gender-swapping characters.
What she needs, what she came all the way down here for, is you.
I kissed a girl and I liked it.
Tencent does the work by introducing new female characters, which it does fine, and further fleshing out the ones already there, which it does good. But for some reason, I can't really shake the impression of Liu's gender traditionalism still at play, likely as a result of the faithful adaptation elsewhere. Surely the books can't be that bad with women characters, right? Well, let's put it this way. Book 1 is mostly men, but it's excusable. The beating heart of Book 2 is Luoji's romance with, arguably, a manic pixie dream girl who we don't get to know that well, and like her, the other women largely exist as complements to their male peers. Book 3 has a female protagonist, Shang Xin, but she fills a nurturing, maternal, defiantly heterosexual role, and Liu insinuates a link between this femininity and the feminization of society as a whole, and its inability to make the hard choices and do what's right. You get some descriptions of woman side characters that are straight out of a mid-century pulp novel. Other people have written about this in more detail. So what am I saying here? I have a similar relationship with the Remembrance trilogy as I do with Dune. You can't separate the art from the artist, but you can love art you don't necessarily agree with if you consciously engage with it. That's why I find something like God Emperor of Dune so fascinating, even though it's clearly homophobic and vaguely libertarian. The difference, though, is that Herbert was writing half a century ago. Liu, not even a couple decades. His books feel older than they are, and their social attitudes match, which is not a compliment. Does he owe it to us to fill a diversity quota or pass the Bechdel test in his stories? That would be nice, but no, not really. Does his writing suggest conservative and nationalist beliefs?
Oh yes, the whole world knows.
Has he admitted to these beliefs? More or less. Do I find these beliefs concerning? Absolutely. Does that invalidate his work? I don't think so. But you have every right to be turned away by it. Obviously, Liu Cixin does not represent China as a whole. So when I call Tencent's show the authentically Chinese one, I don't attribute every single decision I don't like to some regressive tendency at the heart of the country. Like everywhere, there are forces at play who want the safest product while also conforming to Liu's work. And for Tencent, that means pro-traditional family, pro-traditional gender roles. This.
我是达芬奇。笨蛋！哦，别碰我！
Pro-military, pro-revisionism, and pro-nationalism cloaked in internationalism. I mean, what do you think all the nods to the Beijing Olympics are for? And we should approach the Netflix show with the same level of skepticism. I'm not convinced the reason people put a magnifying glass on every little imperfection in Chinese media isn't to distract themselves from Western media having the exact same issues. Go through the list of traits I just rattled off, and you'd be hard-pressed to find a mainstream, big-budget Western product that doesn't champion any of them. But this isn't a purity test. Again, what am I saying here? Be critical, but don't generalize. Don't fall for this shit.
Don't be racist. I am a
YouTube channel with 8 subscribers and a bad mic. Let's be honest. Most people will never read The Three-Body Problem, much less the whole trilogy. Chances are you haven't either, in which case things like faithfulness or the author's vision are irrelevant. You're here for good TV, plain and simple. I know it's a bit late in the video for this, but if you want to start from scratch, no book, no spoilers or anything, you could really go either way in terms of which show. But you can only go that way once before coloring your expectations based on that first pick until the end of time. So I would tell my friends this. If you want a quick watch, accessibility, and more formal polish, go for Netflix. If you want to dive deep into a slow burn mystery, rougher around the edges, but in my opinion more rewarding, go for Tencent. I've made it no secret that I prefer the Tencent show, but I don't judge you if Netflix is your favorite. I can easily see myself having grown fond of it if I'd seen it under different circumstances. And besides, these were just their first seasons. The story's not complete. I'll be on my knees begging and praying for Tencent not to fumble their original Dashi miniseries that will lead into book 2. And I'll be cautiously optimistic about Netflix. Really, if each of these second seasons is only going to need one thing, for Tencent that's a bigger budget. And for Netflix, it's time. With the characters, with the world. A longer season. Time. No, not like that. Not like that. We have plenty to occupy us in the meantime. At the start of this video I said there were quite a few adaptations. These 2 shows, yes, but also an unfinished film that might never see the light of day, and an animated series adapting The Dark Forest, but confusingly called The Three-Body Problem, which I haven't seen yet and probably will sometime after posting. Water Drop is a 15-minute short film depicting easily the most harrowing moment of The Dark Forest, in a genuinely unique and almost avant-garde way, but it's worth it. Take it from Liu himself. And there we have it. Okay. I lied. There is another. I know it may be hard to believe, but this would become an official adaptation. Not to mention the first one. My Three Body, as it's called in English, is a pure passion project that slowly ballooned out from the mind of one Li Jianyi into a full-on production. The leaps in quality over just the first season are astounding given the resources they had. But after season 1 adapting the first book was out of the way, they joined the big kids table. And now look at these graphics. Listen to this voice acting. Feel the sheer love for the books oozing in every shot. Past a certain point, you forget it's Minecraft. There is one sequence in the season 4 finale that might be better than anything Netflix or Tencent series have ever done. Is this secretly the best adaptation of the Remembrance trilogy? I don't know, but it is definitely the most dedicated. And in context, the most inspiring. Nothing is stopping you from making art. Nothing. Forget AI, you have so many real tools at your disposal. Audacity is free. DaVinci Resolve is free. Minecraft, 90% chance you already have that. If you don't see anything you like, make it. Might look like this today, but this tomorrow. You gotta start somewhere. Look at me turning this into some kind of inspirational message. No wonder I like the Tencent show. But you watch them yourself. Form your own opinion. Leave a comment. Or don't. Be a wall facer. I'm not your dad.
I thought I was a shit dad.
I'm sure you are.